to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
11:30, Wednesday?
Please note all council members are present. Open Meetings Act is posted on the wall and is accessible to the members of the public. First is the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests. Item A, approve agenda as submitted. Item B, receive and place on file all notices pertaining to this meeting. Item C, receive and place on file all materials having a bearing on this meeting. Item D, approval of minutes of the regular meeting on September 16, 2024, as on file by the city clerk's office. Item E, approval of the minutes of the special meeting on September 30th, 2024, as on file by the city clerk's office. Item F, approval of the funding request from the Beatrice Saratoga Club in the amount of $10,000 for ADA compliant playground equipment and park improvements at Saratoga Astro Park as recommended by the Beatrice Plus Advisory Board. Item G, approval of funding request from the Leadership Beatrice Class Number 18 in the amount of $7,000 for an outdoor shuffleboard court in downtown Beatrice as recommended by the Beatrice Plus Advisory Board. Item H, resolution number 7408, enter into a hangar lease with Wyatt Lindstrom for the purpose of leasing the hangar E4 located at the Beatrice Municipal Airport. Item I, resolution number 7409, entering into a hangar lease with John Niemeyer for the purpose of leasing hangar C2 located at the Beatrice Municipal Airport. Item J, resolution number 7410, entering into a hangar lease with Kim Jordan for the purpose of leasing hangar C1 located at the Beatrice Municipal Airport. Item K, resolution number 7411, adopting the revised continuing education assistance policy. Item L, resolution number 7412, entering into a lease with Gage County for office space in the Beatrice Police Station used by the Gage County Probation Office. Item M, resolution number 7413, entering into a ground lease with Exmark Manufacturing Company Incorporated for the purpose of leasing a portion of city-owned property to be used as a parking lot for Exmark's business. Item N, resolution number 7414, entering into a ground lease with Exmark Manufacturing Company Incorporated for the purpose of leasing a portion of city-owned property to be used as a test area for Exmark business. Item O, resolution number 7415, entering into an agreement between the city and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, providing the city's access to CISA's Protective Domain Name Resolver. Item P, resolution number 7416, entering into the master agreement work order number 3 with Olson Incorporated for post-construction support services related to the water transmission main as recommended by the Board of Public Works. Item Q, number 7417, executing the construction management contract with Southeast Nebraska Development District, SEND, for services associated with the Davis-Bacon and related acts, compliance for the construction phase of CDBG Downtown Revitalization Grant Project 23, DTR 002. Anyone want anything pulled off the agenda? Seeing none, Mr. McLean.
I move the items listed on the consent agenda be approved, accepted, and/or ratified as presented.
Second.
Gentlemen, your vote, please. And that passes 8-0. We have a few public hearings tonight. Public hearing on the acquisition of real property from School District 34-0015, AKA Beatrice Public School District, and FKA the School District of the City of Beatrice, commonly known as Lincoln School Elementary, Paddock Lane Elementary, Cedar Elementary, and Stoddard Elementary School. Hearing is now open.
So I think everybody's very familiar with what's going on with the school districts. It just requires we have a public hearing before we acquire real estate, so that's why we're having this tonight. If everything is approved, we'll go ahead and acquire both Cedar and Stoddard School probably tomorrow. We'll get those deeds filed. Lincoln and Paddock, they are still having their various auctions and sales and getting stuff moved out of those buildings, and so those two will come at a later date. If you're questioning, today the school district is known as School District number 34-0015. It's also commonly known as Beatrice Public School District, and in a former lifetime, it was known as the School District of the City of Beatrice. And so all those names show up on various deeds, and so that's why we put them all in here for you.
Are they in cursive?
They are in cursive, yes. I think Stoddard School, I think they've owned that parcel since the late 1800s.
Oh, my.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was joking.
Glass, I have a question. On Cedar School over there, there's a lot of big chunks of concrete when they tore out the playground equipment. Are we going to be responsible for that, or is the people that took the playground equipment responsible for picking that up? Because that's pretty dangerous stuff right there.
That'll be our responsibility. We have already talked internally that once we acquire the properties, we'll go and make sure, see what playground equipment is left, make sure that it's safe. It may have to be removed just because some other pieces have been removed, and so now you have holes and divots and things like that we just can't repair. And then we'll look to see what we need to fence off, what we don't need to fence off, and try to get those properties cleaned up at least so they're safe moving forward.
Okay, all right.
From the public? Seeing none, Mr. McLean, let's close the hearing.
I move the public hearing be closed at 7:06 PM.
Second.
Your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Public hearing number 2 is the public hearing on the acquisition of real property from Diane Etherton, legally described as the west half of Lot 25, Green Subdivision, in addition to the City of Beatrice Gage, County, Nebraska parcel number 012-057-000, commonly known as 1515 Grant Street, Beatrice, Nebraska. And that hearing is now open.
So the parcel at 1515 Grant Street is not a real suitable house. In fact, it's probably been vacant for a number of years. And so we've been able to work with the owner of this one, Ms. Ethington, who has agreed to sign an agreement with the City of Beatrice where she will donate the parcel to us, and she'll pay us $5,000 over the next 2 years. She's also to pay the back taxes to make sure those are brought current. The city then will demolish the house, and we will then look to redevelop that particular lot. We're looking at what options are there, and we will also secure a deed of trust on her current house, which is out in the country club area, as collateral to ensure that she pays us the money that's owed pursuant to this agreement.
And the garage as well.
Yes, the garage, the concrete, the sidewalks.
Yep.
Yes,
I just want to make sure it was all going.
yes,
T, we do this often?
yes. We do this fairly often. A lot of times we try to find those houses, and you're trying to work with the property owner and see if there's something there. Sometimes they have something you're able to work a deal out, and sometimes they don't.
Well, I think it's a good thing to do. It does a lot of good on both sides, but I want to make sure the public knows about this for sure, because that's something we could do a few other places in this community, I think. Yep.
Anybody from the public? If not, Mr. McLean, let's close the hearing.
I move the public hearing be closed at 7:08 PM.
Second.
Your vote, please. That passes 8-0. All right, the next public hearing is for the purpose of considering the proposed 1- and 6-year road and street plan for 2025. That hearing is now open.
James, I see you sitting out there. You want to come on up? So one street plan is something that we do every year. It's something that was required by the state. I don't know if it's required anymore, or
We're required to do it, but not submit the documents. We're required to have them on file.
okay. I knew something had changed there, so we'll let James talk about the 1- and 6-year plan and what he's kind of put together. And
Yeah, go ahead. 'Cause I can see this one up there, and I can see that one.
You got one.
Yeah.
Well, this could be, all right, well, this might be even a little bit more difficult than I thought.
that information James is looking at is the same thing you guys have, the council members have in front of you.
So where is
In
the
your
street
big
lights
packets.
tabs on there?
That's right.
He was here before the meeting. I told him it was boring. Man.
So, as Tobias said, every year we're required to do this. Basically what the 1- and 6-year plan is, the state allocates so many dollars to each municipality that, for our lane miles that we have through the city of Beatrice. And those are the funds that we use for a lot of our maintenance projects that we have in the city of Beatrice. we have to show the state how we're going to use those dollars, and that's in essence what a 1 and 6 year is. It's how you're going to spend the dollars over the next 6 years. So every year, of course, we try to pick these projects off, and then we come back to you with a new set of projects. So that's kind of what we're here to discuss tonight. And as most of you know, in order to choose the type of roadways that we're going to do, we used to do a method where we had this spreadsheet, and we'd take so many points off. A roadway would start out at 100%, or what we call 100 PCI, which is Pavement Condition Index. We'd minus 1 point or minus 3 points or minus 6 points based on if it was concrete or asphalt, right? And so that was kind of the old method of doing it. And a lot of times when we would do that, we would see that those scores didn't necessarily match up with the actual condition of the pavement that we're seeing out in the real world. So we've done some research, and we went out and found a program that is called StreetLogix. So I still have those old spreadsheets. I don't throw them out because I'm afraid, if something went away, I wanted to go back to the old records. I still have those. But this year we fully implemented the use of the StreetLogix program. So I'm going to quick brief overview and just what it is. Basically what you're seeing on this map is the overview of the city of Beatrice. The colors, there's a legend on the right side, and that is our PCI score. And it has a range of, so often you can see this road go from excellent condition to good condition to fair condition, poor, so on and so on. And that's based on that PCI or Pavement Condition Index score. So now you're going to ask, well, how do we get this score? Well, first of all, to give you an overview, the city of Beatrice right now, when you take all the roadways and put them together, what is our average score for the city of Beatrice? So 100% being every road to be perfect, which we know is not the case. We have a score of 77 as an average for over the whole city of Beatrice, which you could look at it 77%, but it's really a score of 77 out of 100 in terms of the condition of the pavement. Okay?
James, so
Yep.
you're only talking about solid surface roads, you're not talking about gravel or?
That's correct.
You were getting to that.
Yep, no, but that's correct. You are correct. We're talking about asphalt and concrete roadways.
Okay.
Yep. We could throw brick in here, but we haven't done that. We don't include gravel as well.
Okay.
Okay? So the next question we get a lot of times is, okay, it's great, you have this program and you have all the road information in there, and you were talking about doing points. Well, how are you scoring these roadways now? Okay, so there's called a deterioration curve. And that curve is based on the age of the road and what type of surface it is. So for example, I have right here is called a deterioration curve for concrete. You can see the average life that we like to project out for concrete is 35 years. So over 35 years of time frame, it starts out at 0 at 100 PCI score, and then over that time frame, it degrades to 0 over its lifetime. This is the curve that the model is using to deteriorate those roads over time. Asphalt, we have a separate deterioration curve. This, you notice that the years out is only 20 years. Okay? Now, one thing I'm going to implement, this is for full depth asphalt, meaning if you had 6 or 8 inches of full depth asphalt, you can project out 20 years, and you can see that curve and how it functions. If you know Beatrice, we have a lot of roadways where we do 2-inch mill and overlays over a low grade base. To me, you cannot project out 20 years on that material. We're lucky if we get 10 years out of that material. So I'm going to set up another deterioration curve for next year, where one will be for full depth asphalt and one will be for our 2-inch mill and overlays that we have. So I'll have all those curves in there and input that data. But this is where we're at today using this information. So this is how each year, how the condition of our roadways, how they pull points off of the roadways based on the surface type and based on the years it's been in service. Okay?
So James, I was reading about expanded shale.
Yep.
Since you're talking about asphalt right now, what's the difference there?
So expanded shale, what Jason was talking about there was for armor coating. Currently armor coating, the aggregate that we use, because you cover the roadway with so many gallons of tar, and then you put the rock surfacing on there to impregnate it into that tar. Currently right now we've been using gravel. And the state spec that we want to get is really hard to get. We can't hardly ever get that rock. And so we're forced to use a 47B, which is used for concrete. It's not ideal for our roadways. There's another product out there which costs a little bit more, which is expanded shell that you're referring to. And we're looking to go to that product, which will give us more life, has less dust, and it's easier for us to access through the state because the state has state bids on it.
Not to try to dominate this, for just one more question. So can you tell everybody what's the difference between life there on that type of asphalt versus concrete?
Well, the asphalt, so you gotta understand, armor coating is just a maintenance that we
Right,
do.
right.
It doesn't affect the structural component
I mean,
of the
like-
asphalt. So if you have, based on the score, I don't wanna get into all of it, but based on the score of the asphalt, you start out with 100%, you don't do anything, right? And as you come down on your score, the asphalt's still holding up good, but needs to have something done. So we do what's called an asphalt seal coat, which is where we just spray the bituminous covering that you see with no rock. Okay, that reseals the asphalt road up. But as it degrades, the next step we do is an armor coat, where we're putting another rock surface on there or a friction, something to have more friction to the asphalt. That's the next step in there. Once it gets past that, then we do a mill and overlay. And if we can't fix it with the mill and overlay, then it's a complete reconstruction.
Okay.
So that's how all these points are set up, that when they fall within those categories.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, except for lifespan. The
So armor
concrete-
coating is only as good as the base material you're putting it on. So what I'm telling you is if you have a road that scores really bad and it's down in the 10 to 20s and you put an armor coat on it, it's not going to prolong the life very well of that existing asphalt. Now, the ideal is if you have an asphalt that's performing good in its first 5 years of life, that's usually when you want to hit it with an armor coat. So the idea on that curve, you come down, you put the armor coat on it, it brings it back up to 100%, and then you go another 5 years, you armor coat and you bring it back up. That's if the structural component of the asphalt is good. Our problem is with a lot of our 2-inch stuff that we have, no matter what we do, we're putting a Band-Aid on it because it's falling apart with the truck traffic and everything else.
Concrete,
Concrete, you know,
25.
you saw if we can get a good base, 35, 40, 50 years. I mean, there's some roadways that have been here even longer than that are
Yep.
holding up well.
cool, thank you for that.
Yep. So as an example of how we're utilizing this program, if I go in here and I go into maintenance, where are we at? Why isn't it showing up? Let me go down and select this road. So we recently did 13th Street, as most of you are aware. Anyway, what you'll see on 13th Street, it starts at 100%, and over the years it's degraded down to 70% or 60%. Since we did that project as new construction, you would see that PCI score bounce back up to 100% on the PCI score. So every year I go in the new projects that we do, I input that information, and this is how we start over back at 100% on our PCI score. So with that being said, that's the program that we're using. That's how we're getting the scores. This is just a tool that we're using to make a decision on what roads we should look at for our maintenance program. It's not the final determining factor. As most of you know, there's streets out there that Jason, through his driving around, sees roads that he feels need to be done. Those get moved up to the top if they're not matching the scores. Or if there's a roadway that the council or the public is inputting that they want something done. Sometimes those get moved up to the top of the list as well. So we take all those things into account. And budgets is a big thing as well. What can we fit in this budget year is probably the biggest factor we do in terms of the maintenance that we do for the roadways. So that's kind of an overview on how we decide these projects. So do you have any questions on this program and how we're selecting these streets?
I don't necessarily have a question on the program, but I do have a question on the maintenance portion. So lots of streets, I know in my neighborhood and the places where I walk and run, over the last 2 years, a lot of weeds growing up in the cracks. So is that part of this equation, or because the maintenance of that? I mean, does that show in the deterioration of it when the cracks aren't sealed and they're not maintained? Is that part of this?
So how the original PCI score was generated for each road, in essence, they basically take a car
Right.
that has all these cameras on it, and they drove every street in the city of Beatrice. And they have these algorithms based on the cracking, based on the width of the road, and based on the unevenness of the road. That's how they came up with the score. So that's how that was generated. Now to answer your other
Google
question.
Earth for roads.
What's that?
Google Earth for roads.
The image looks exactly the same as what we got provided to us from their car.
Okay.
Now to answer the other part of your question, Jason's crew goes out and crack seal as much as they can. So if weeds are coming through, it's probably where a road where the cracks have widened enough and we haven't got them joint sealed yet, and that's why you're seeing that happen.
Okay.
So there's just only so many man hours
Yeah, I
that
know.
these guys can get
Yeah, they're
to.
busy. I know they are.
So, but we try to do the best we can, and if there's areas like that you mentioned, I think that he tries and goes and gets those done. So,
James,
yeah,
I noticed on the year one, we're finally getting some work done up in the Glenover area. Is that gonna be concrete or is that gonna be asphalt?
so we'll just start into that then. We'll go through that.
I might interject one real
Yep.
quick. You know, I do want to say thanks to James and Jason, because they do go out, it's not all software.
Yeah,
They really do go out and check everything. And the other thing that we will probably see in the near future is probably some type of budgetary item where the car comes back, because I think you recommended once every 5 years. So I'll just throw that in everybody's mind that
Right.
the car probably will be coming back, and by the time, this was the base year,
it was.
and so by the time you get the next 5 years, you're going to be able to see how close the algorithms are
Right.
to everything. So I just want to plant that seed out there for you,
Yep,
that
thank you.
the car will probably be coming back.
Yes. All right, so I apologize to the public. Our spreadsheets don't come through very well on the screen, so I will do my best to explain the projects we have. With our 1 and 6 years, Jason and I often tell you that year 1 and 2 are the most important because, as most of you know, our budget is biannual budget, and our budgets are pretty well set for years 1 and 2. After that, there's a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle here. We have a lot of large-scale projects that we make sure are included in the 1 and 6, but you'll notice we get very specific in year 1 and 2 on the armor coating and asphalt ceiling streets that we're doing. Past 2 year, it's just a placeholder. We just say this dollar amount, and this is what we're going to do for armor coating. So just keep that in mind. Year 1, I'm just going to start off real quick. We have the continuation of Ellis Street, which is a project that we're working on from 2nd to 3rd, and that's a conversion of that little section there, which is brick, and we're going to make it 8-inch concrete. Currently, what we're doing with it, we'll have some angle parking on the north side and a couple parallel parking spaces on the south side. We're hoping to add some features to that, whether it be landscaping or some benches or even trees. Those are some things that we're going to implement in that downtown area for people to start looking at and start trying to see what they like and what they don't like about the improvements that may be coming for the downtown area. So next we have Lincoln Street on here from 25th to 50, from 25th Street to 1,500 feet east. Basically, that is Lincoln Street from 25th to 27th Street. That would be the continuation project of the Lincoln Street project that's going on now. That would happen next year. Okay? And that's 9-inch concrete, and that matches with what they're currently putting in over by the school. Lincoln Street, the 1,500 foot east of 33rd, that's what's being built right now. That's to the roundabout right at the school. And then you have 33rd Street, Lincoln to 1,250 foot south. That's currently what's being built right now. It's just a continuation on into this year. As most of you have heard, they're going to be done early, though. They're planning on being done in October. So that's good news. So now we're going to start into our mill and overlay projects. Our 3-inch mill and overlay, we have Grant Street from 14th to 16th, and that's a 3-inch mill and overlay. What we're trying to do right now with our mill and overlays, a lot of times we used to do a 2-inch. We are trying to mill out another inch and trying to get a total of 3 inches in on that low-grade base and trying to get a few more years out of them before we have to come back and re-hit them with a mill and overlay. So, next street is Paddock Street from Sumner to Weeby, which is a 3-inch mill and overlay, which is asphalt. And then we have Scott Street, which is from 5th to 6th. That's that little section in there that's really bad. We probably have to do some curb and gutter replacement on there, and maybe even some discussion about sidewalks, because it's like, I don't know what you call it, like old slats that are leaning up against the building that we might have to do something with along that corridor. So that is our major construction projects, where you have the concrete and you have the mill and overlay. Do any of you have questions on those projects being presented? Because then we get into the asphalt ceiling projects. and our asphalt armor coating, which we spread out through the city, and based on those scores, that's where these projects were generated from. We're proposing, there's $75,000 budget for armor coating, and there's $75,000 for asphalt sealing. So that's how much work we're planning on doing those projects, on just those type of projects. So in total for year one, this is with all the projects that are out there, I mean, including the big projects, we have about $6.3 million in project costs in this year. Total budget, I came up with the funds that we have available to us, about $6.2 million. So it's a shortfall of about $100,000. But I always tell you, keep in mind, when we go out for bids on these projects, I try to be very conservative on my numbers. So when we go out for bids, hopefully they come in under my number. And if they don't, then that's when we can, pull some of these projects off, whether it be armor coating or the asphalt sealing. We can start pulling some sections off to fit within the budget that we have for this year. Any questions on year one and how we came up with that? Okay. I'm going to go to year two. And I'm not going to go through each and every year, 6 years. I want to go through year 1 and 2. And then if there's any questions on other years, feel free, or the public, whatever it has, then we can go through those. But you can see our projects start dwindling down in year 2 because of just the pure scale of the projects that we have. So I included in this project US Highway 136, which is going to go, let's see here, I have it from, this goes from First Street, which is basically the museum, all the way out to like 21st Street. This is the state project where they're going to come in and do a mill and overlay on the highway US 136, and it's a maintenance project. They will update the ADA ramps at that time as well. We do not have any funds associated with this project. So this is completely funded by the state, but I'm showing it in here just so that the people can understand what's coming up in year 2 and what they can expect. We have done some projects to kind of prepare for that. If you recall the curb and gutter and sidewalk project that we did from 10th to 13th, that's kind of in preparation of that because we had some really bad areas, and I think Jason's crews have been out and done some other repair work preparing for this project to happen in year 2.
James, how thick is that going to be? Would you guess?
Well, their mill and overlay, I'm guessing their mill and overlay will be 3 inches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
What that basically is, I think what Jason was talking about, we've done some excavating with the water main and stuff, but you have like 6 inches of asphalt, and then there's like 2 or 3 layers of old brick roadway in some areas, and in some areas there's a concrete base underneath there, so there's a substantial amount of pavement in the highway. All right, so then we're going to jump into one of the projects that Jason and I have listed in here is the replacement of 7th Street from Arthur to Monroe, which would be 7-inch concrete. Most of you were talking about the joints and grass growing through. That's one of those streets right there.
Yep.
That's a local roadway, so that's why it would be considered 7-inch, not 8 or 9, due to the traffic load on it. Okay. Next, this is where, if you recall, where we did a study on Lincoln Street. And instead of just putting it all in 1 year, we broke Lincoln Street out into segments on what we possibly could do. So this is the first section of that Lincoln Street project, which would be from 5th to 8th Street. So that would be the intersection of Highway 77 to 8th Street. This would be the first section of the improvements to Lincoln Street. And I'm just showing that in year 2. We have a mill and overlay project that we're slated to do with Marble Avenue, 3rd to 5th Street. Jason's done a little bit of repair work on that this year, but this would be the complete reconstruction of Marble Avenue from 3rd to 5th. And then we have 10th Street, which goes all the way from Court to Scott. Now, the thing that we are currently doing, this is shown in year 2. We are going out for some additional funding, and if that funding would come through, these 2 projects might get moved up to year 1. And then we'd look at replacing these 2 projects with something else. And that's the other thing good about our 1 and 6. It is fluid. Just because we say it's in year 2 doesn't mean it has to happen in year 2. We can move projects around whatever fits our budget. Okay? So in year 2, we have a total slated projects of $4.4 million. And as you can see, I have a budget of about $4.4 million. So we're right there in the grand scheme of things, being really close to where we think the projects will cost. Any questions with the second year? Okay. So then just reoccurring through the rest of the years, we have the continuation of Lincoln Street. So you'll have, 8th now to 11th. And then the next one is, the next year after that, Lincoln Street is 11th to 14th and so on and so on. We bite pieces off each year of Lincoln Street, and that's how we have it listed in the 1 and 6.
James, when we talked about Lincoln Street, we talked about doing just some of the intersections
We did.
where the problems. So did that plan get pushed aside and we're just gonna do this a couple, 2, 3 blocks at a shot?
Most of these, if you look, kind of encapsulate those intersections. There might be a couple additional projects fit in there, but you could do that. You could do just, there's the first project I mentioned in year 2 would include Highway 77.
Right. Big project.
Then the 13th Street section wouldn't be included into year 2028 or the 4th year.
Yeah,
And then 19th. But you could do that. You could go and hit those intersections if you
Yeah, I just wondered if that was part of the conversation, if we just talked about hitting those intersections from 5th or 4th all the way out and doing the intersections, then are already done when you come back and do the road. I don't have a problem with it either way. I was just curious as to how that was decided, how that worked out.
Dad, I think that's gonna be a funding question.
Yeah.
I think if you look through
Everything's a funding
everything's a
question.
funding question, yes.
You can do it that way as well. Okay, so
Okay.
that would be a very logical way of doing it, is hitting those big intersections and then infilling in between them.
Right.
You could do it that way as well. This just spread it out over more years, so that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, the intersections, there's an enormous amount of traffic, even more so now with the elementary school. But the intersections, in my opinion, which it only counts my opinion because I sit here and that's in my ward. It makes it kind of my opinion. But I think the surface doesn't seem to be too bad. The intersections seem to be problematic.
Right.
That it doesn't drain well. We mill and overlaid. We put so much. And there's some places in some of those intersections, instead of having a 4-inch curb or a 5-inch curb or a 6-inch curb, you got a 2-inch curb.
Yep, exactly.
So, the water pools doesn't run off. Same thing with the snow. I'm more concerned. I guess I'd like to see it all done. I'm just a little more concerned with the intersections.
And they can be changed, if this council decides in year 2, when we show Lincoln Street starting, if, hey, you want to change that way, we can change it that way.
Yeah, no, Tobias, he knows exactly where I'm at with this. We've had this conversation repeatedly. When those funding things come up, I get notified. I was just curious I know you and Jason made the plan. I just wondered how it got moved. So I'm okay with it either way. I just was curious.
So I'm going to move through real quick to year 4. I'm going to hit some key projects and just show that they're in the 1 and 6. When I go to year 4, this is just a placeholder. This is just a start of the highway relocation. I'm just taking the cost estimates that Olson's had in their study, and I'm just injecting them into our 1 and 6 year plan so we kind of know where they were setting at. So I have the highway, and again, we broke it up into kind of even pieces. It doesn't mean this is how it gets built. So this is in year 4 in 2028 is when I start the beginning of the US Highway 136 relocation project. And basically that first one, which is Olson's estimate is 50% of that is $5 million. So that's what I put in there. The other big project that we can talk about that we know is coming through the state telling us about this project here just this year is Highway 77 improvements, which basically start at the south corporate limits and go all the way to Industrial Row. And that's a 3-inch mill and overlay project as well. There's some other things that we're looking at along that corridor. Now, the biggest problem that we have to look at with that corridor is the city of Beatrice is going to be expected to pay for part of those improvements. And that's based on this formula that no one can explain to me and no one can explain to you how they come up with this dollar amount. But it will be, in the budget right now, it's $5 million for that project. I can't tell you if it's half that. I can't tell you if it's a third of that. But we got to be prepared that we will get charged for some of that project coming in 2028. So, do you have anything else?
And last time that happened, we didn't know until the year before what that dollar amount was.
Right. they worked with us on it, and they said, well, you could spread the payments out, and
I think they gave us 3 years to make our payments last time.
yeah.
They went longer than that. It was considered giving us credit to the state, and they couldn't allow that, but 3 was okay, so.
So when they resurface 136 in another year, are they paying for, how much is that?
That's considered a maintenance project, and that's in their budget. We're not.
So they're paying 100% of that?
Yep.
It has to do with the fact that Highway 77 comes into town at 4 lanes and leaves at town going 2 lanes, so that's why you pay for part of it. And Highway 136 comes in 3 and leaves 3, so you don't pay anything.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
It's a formula they have, and I couldn't even begin to explain it. But I can tell you that we're going to be expected to pay for some of this project in 2028.
So James, whenever here, I can't follow quite fast enough, but whenever we are improving Lincoln Street at 6th and Lincoln, does it end up being the same kind of lane crossing the street that it is right now?
No. One of my pet peeves is Highway 77 and Lincoln Street. I hate that intersection. It would be completely revamped so that the lanes would line up, proper turn lanes would be put in. That would all be adjusted. Same with 13th Street where there's a jog there.
Mm-hmm.
That would be taken out and have a smoother transition at 13th Street. And then, at 19th Street right now, we have the 4-way stop, and everybody knows where we kind of want to go with that intersection in the future.
Good.
So, the other big project in 2028 is Lincoln Street, and then we have another filler project after that. So, we just continue on with those in year 5. We have the other half of the highway relocation project. We have the Lincoln Street continuation from 14th to 17th. And then we have the 6-year project, which is Court Street downtown. So after you would relocate it, then you would redo your magic on Court Street and beautify that area for a pedestrian-friendly corridor through there. And then you have the last section of Lincoln Street from 17th to 19th. And then after that, we don't have to show this to you, but we have a wish list. Tobias told us to always kind of start a wish list past the 1 and 6, and that's what the final spreadsheet is future projects. And we just kind of keep tabs. So if we get that funding, let's say for those mill and overlay projects in year 2, we move them up, then we can slide one of these possibly up into year 2 and start picking some of these off.
How does the West Court Street Bridge project going to affect you? That's what, about 5 years out?
So we saw that project, and we were really concerned about how that could affect the relocation project. And I believe that one is in 2029. Let me look here. Beatrice, Road Crossing East, the West Bridge. Beatrice West, that's West. Big Blue Ridge River, that one is in 29.
You don't have very many details yet, probably.
No, nothing. They're doing this. So in 29, which would kind of line up with if we move forward with our downtown relocation, would line up with that. My biggest concern that I told them that I was worried about was there is currently a new floodplain study being done. So if they redesign that bridge, they may want to raise it, let's say, to make sure it have enough freeboard for the floodplain. How would that affect the elevations of the downtown area? I want to make sure there would have to be a ramp, let's say, all the way to 2nd Street, right? And that would really impact on how our project would lay in there. So we had a meeting with the state. We went over all these projects. They're aware of our projects. They understand that, and we will get together and make sure that those all mesh together.
So that floodplain district meeting, is that a 500-year floodplain?
100 year.
Because they were talking about a 500-year.
500 is always part of the study, but in terms of regulations, you only look at the 100 year.
That would make a difference.
Yep. So that's kind of like I said, there's a lot of big projects in there which really chew up a lot of the dollars. So, maintenance, Jace understood that, and that's why there's so much maintenance this year, because we wanted to try to address as many as we could to last us the next 5 years. So,
Any other questions from anybody in the public? The only thing I would put a plug in is we've been working for our Safe Streets for All. That project is coming to an end. There's actually a public hearing on October 30th It'll be at the high school, which will unveil basically most of what the Safe Streets for All have to do with it. But the reason we did the Safe Streets for All, not only because we want safe streets, but it also is something we had to do to reach out and start to get grants that could possibly move a lot of this. As you said, funding is the big key. And because of that report, it's going to open up some doors for us to hopefully get some dollars in here. Probably not to the magnitude of the RAISE grant, but at least can certainly start, I would think, assisting on Lincoln Street in particular, since we already know and had the study of what we kind of wanted to do. So, thank you.
Good job.
All right. All right. Shall we close the hearing?
I move the public hearing be closed at 7:40 PM.
Second.
All those in favor? And that passes. Okay, we'll move on to resolutions. Resolution number 7419, adopting the 1 and 6 year road and street plan for 2025 as recommended by the Board of Public Works.
I move the resolution number 7417 be passed and adopted.
Second.
All right, so we got 7419.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. And just so
Says
everybody's following along, 7418, we're going to skip tonight because the individual has not signed the agreement. So that's why we're not doing that one.
Correct.
So we have a motion for 7419. Mr. Phelan seconded it. So this just adopts everything that James just went over, the big giant sheets you have in front of you, adopting the 1 and 6 year street plan.
Any further discussion needed? If not, your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Resolution number 7420, declaring the city's official intent under the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended to reimburse certain capital expenditures from the proceeds of tax-exempt or tax-favored debt obligations as recommended by the Board of Public Works.
I move the resolution number 7420 be passed and adopted.
Second.
So this is called a reimbursement resolution. As we talked about during the budget season, the utility departments are looking to issue a bond in this upcoming year. This allows us to go out and start spending dollars, and then when we issue the bonds, we'll reimburse ourselves. Largely it comes down to a timing issue. You don't want to issue the bonds too soon and pay interest on money that you don't need quite yet, but at the same time, we will wait for projects to kind of get held up. And so this will allow our guys to go out, start procuring the items that they need. Again, WPC is looking at a vac truck, water department's looking at a vac truck, and the street department's looking at upgrading substation 2 out in the industrial park. Be about $2 million bond issuance.
Discussion.
Toby, what do we have as bonds out there now other than the fire hall?
For the utility side of things, they have no bonds. The only debt that's out there is the water department has their SRF loan, but the WPC and the electric department have no debt.
Mayor, as we had talked here a while back, and I think the public would be interested to know, and it's just where it's going in the future is, vac trucks will be just imperative anymore. The digging is almost obsolete anymore, and so they're very expensive, and I've been around with BPW and had seen a couple of those come and go, but I think so the public understands it's just a necessary tool.
Yes, it is. All right. Gentlemen, your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Resolution number 7421, adopting the plan in hand report for the work required to construct the proposed trail from Riverside Park to Homestead National Historical Park Project, TAP, FLTP 34(44), Beatrice Homestead Trail, CN 13488.
I move the resolution number 7421 be passed and adopted.
Second.
So this is the trail out to the Homestead. We've secured TAP grant funding for this particular project. One of the projects, or one of the parts of any type of these projects, is what's called a plan in hand meeting. So essentially, the engineers have made a design, probably about 30% design. We sit down, we go over it, and at that plan in hand meeting, which was April 1st of this year, at that point, the engineers had drawn most of the trail on private property. And both the Homestead National Monument and the City of Beatrice expressed our displeasure with that. This is not what we had signed up for. This is not what we asked them to do. And so Olson's is the engineer on the plan on the project, so they went back and reworked it. And in the design that's before you now, A majority of the trail is on the public right-of-way. We went from having about 6 acres of ground that was on private property to now we're down to less than half an acre. So majority of this trail has now moved. It would exit the city of Beatrice at Riverside Park. It would then head out through River Road and then cross over on the south side of Highway 136 and follow the south side out to the Homestead National Monument. It actually stops at the county road that is just to the east of the Homestead National Monument. And it has to do with the fact if we cross into the Homestead National Monument's property, then Federal Highway has a problem with it because, I couldn't understand it. But there's an issue with it if we go onto their property, so that's why we're stopping there. And that will be a separate project later. Currently, what we're looking at is bidding in August of 2026 and construction in 2027.
Discussion.
Just a question. This is like before some of our time here. Have we had public hearings on this, T?
Yes.
Okay. And with this redesign, do people that abut this know what's going on with this design?
I don't know if they've been reached out to at this point, because again, most of it's on the public right-of-way at this
Right.
point. And so as the plan progresses forward, at some point, they will be contacted, those who need to be acquired, either temporary or permanent easements. Those people will be contacted.
Well, and I'm just wondering that we don't because you're asking us to approve this tonight, right?
Correct.
The design. They at least should know that they can come down to your office and take a look at this document for sure, so we just don't have these people a year from now show up here and go, they didn't know anything about it and it's too late. So make sure that everybody knows that they can come down and look at where the lines are going to be drawn now.
Other discussion from the public? Your vote, please. And that passes 8-0. Resolution number 7422, executing the project program agreement between the city and Nebraska Department of Transportation for the Court Street Access and Safety Transformation, known as CAST Initiative, Project DPS 34, parentheses 46, CN 13608.
I move the resolution number 7422 be passed and adopted.
Second.
As with most of our large federal projects, what this agreement would do is hand off the federal requirements to Nebraska Department of Transportation, and they would manage those moving forward on the CAST initiative or the relocation of Highway 136. This is a similar agreement that we signed for the trail after the Homestead. It's a similar agreement we signed for the Pioneer Trail that went through town. Quite frankly, we don't have the staff to handle the federal requirements that are necessary for this type of project. And so Department of Transportation will take care of those things. If you read through the agreement, if you read through all 27 pages or whatever it is, you'll notice there's a plan in hand in there as well. It requires the city to approve that one. So I know there's been some questions about if we hand this off to NDOT, do we lose control? You can see we have to come back and approve the plan in hand just as you did for the trail that was out there. NDOT gave me a draft of their RFQ today that we're reading through there. One of the questions I had was who's on the committee. NDOT indicated back to me that they would have 2 people on the committee and we could have 2 or 3 people on the committee as well. And so we'll certainly have a say in who gets selected to be the engineers on it. So although you are turning over a lot of it to NDOT, you still will have control on this project. Right now, we're looking at a bid letting target date of October of 2027 for this project.
Discussion needed. If not, your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Resolution number 7423, exiting the purchase agreement to transfer the house located at 1902 Lincoln Street to Randy Essick.
I move the resolution number 7423 be passed and adopted.
Second.
So 1902 Lincoln Street, we acquired this property some time ago, within the last couple months, 6 months or so. We've worked out a deal with Randy Essick for him to acquire the property. The agreement is for him to purchase it for $750. He then is going to move the house off of that property. He has to have it removed, I think, by June 30th of 2025. So we give him some time. The agreement does call out a penalty if he does not have the house moved by that date. We are also then in the next agreement going to lease him the property for $1 so he can gain access to the house, get it ready for moving, do everything he has to do to get prepared for that. And so then we're just bound to waiting for his movers to come in and do their work. When he's done, we'll still have to go remove the foundation and the basement that's left there. Obviously, that's not his responsibility. We'll take care of those after he has completed his portion of the move.
Discussion. Seeing none, your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Resolution number 7424, enter into a lease with Randy Essink for the purpose of accessing the house located at 1902 Lincoln Street to prepare said house for removal.
I move the resolution number 7424 be passed and adopted.
Second.
As we just discussed, the lease is for the 9 months. It's for $1. Largely, he just needs access to the property. Utilities will be put in his name. He'll have control of those types of things, but he'll need to be on there to get it ready to move the house.
Any discussion needed? Your vote, please. That'll pass 8-0. Resolution number 7425, executing the loan agreement, promissory note, personal guarantee, and deed of trust, and any other necessary documents between the city and MDDS LLC for a direct loan in the amount of $8,400 as part of the Downtown Revitalization Program and CDBG Grant 23 DTR 002.
I move the resolution number 7425 be passed and adopted.
Second.
As with the other downtown revitalization grants that we talked about the last time, this one is for MDDS LLC. It's 105 to 111 North Fish Street. They're going to do some brick repairs, some tuck pointings, and we have some bricks that are need to be replaced there. The loan or the grant amount is for $8,400. Again, we set up as a forgivable loan because they have to keep the improvements for 5 years. I don't know how they would not keep tuck pointing for 5 years, but somehow they managed to find a way not to do it. We would have to pay the state back, and so this allows us an opportunity to claw our money back if it would be necessary.
Discussion needed? Okay, your vote, please. And that passes 7 with 1 abstention.
Yes.
Resolution number 7426, executing the general release request of reconveyance and the deed of reconveyance along with all their necessary documents to release and discharge Michael S. and Shelley R. Shaefer regarding their LB840 Loan Agreement.
I move the resolution number 7426 be passed and adopted.
Second.
So Mike Shaefer had gotten the 2021, the last downtown revitalization grant we got. If you recall, he had to make a payment to the contractor to get him here, but then he had to wait for reimbursement, and so we loaned him LB840, and then when he got his grant money, he simply repaid us. That's all been taken care of by now. So he got his grant dollars, we traded checks, he paid us back, everything's been paid in full, so this one releases all of those collateral that you had with the LB840 loan.
Any discussion needed? If not, your vote, please. And that passes 8-0. Now, resolution number 7427, executing the loan agreement, promissory note, personal guarantee, and deed of trust, and any other necessary documents between the city and Michael S. and Shelley R. Shaefer for a direct loan in the amount of $29,880 as part of the Downtown Revitalization Program and CDBG Grant 23-DTR-002.
I move that resolution number 7427 be passed and adopted.
Second.
So the last downtown revitalization grant, Michael Shaefer fixed up the cinema, or the north side. This time he's going to do the south side, or excuse me, he did the Holly, or the north side. This time he's going to do the cinema, or the south side. This grant's for $29,880. Again, he has all the same deeds of trust and collateral and that kind of stuff as those other grants do.
Discussion needed. Be nice to have both sides done,
Yes, it will.
so it'll be a nice addition.
Painting starting October 16th. Quote from Michael Shaefer, not from me.
You're not doing it, huh?
No, I'm not going to. That's why it's from Michael. Okay.
Your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Move on to ordinances. We have an ordinance establishing salaries and compensation for various city and Board of Public Works non-union employees.
I move that said ordinance be given number 24-29. The title thereof be approved, the rules be suspended, and the said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Second.
A motion to suspend the rules is not debatable, so your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Ordinance number 2429 by number only the first time, 2429 the second time, 24-29 the third and final time.
I move that ordinance number 24-29 be passed and approved.
Second.
State law requires us to have a salary ordinance get passed once a year. This one calls for a 2.5% COLA for all non-union employees.
Any discussion needed? If not, your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Ordinance establishing salaries and compensation for various city and Board of Public Works union employees.
I move that said ordinance be given number 24-30. The title thereof be approved, the rules be suspended, and the said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Second.
A motion to suspend the rules is not debatable. Your vote, please. That passes 8-0. Ordinance number 2430 by number only the first time, 2430 the second time, 24-30 the third and final time.
I move that ordinance number 24-30 be passed and approved.
Second.
Again, we're required to have a salary ordinance. If you recall, the police, we just signed their contract for 3.5% COLA this year, and fire and IBW are in their current contracts that call for 2.5% COLA this year.
Any discussion needed? If not, your vote, please. And that passes 8-0. That's the end of the ordinances. We'll move on to public forum. The purpose of the public forum is for a presentation of an item by the general public to the city council for consideration at a later date. No discussion or action will be taken by the city council at this time. Come on up. Yeah, bet.
Dana Heido, 208 Sherman Street. I want to put a bug in your ear about the Cedar School property. That playground that was on Cedar School was played at a lot with those kids on that side. If you think about it, Riverside is on the other side of the highway and on a very busy street. And when you think about your plans that you're looking at for both Paddock and Lincoln, I don't believe Paddock has a playground because they're close to one. But you are putting something at Lincoln because they would have to cross a busy street in order to get to that. So just as a thought, rather than waiting years down the road where Cedar may be, because we don't have a solid plan yet, which is fine, but it would be helpful to the kids on that side of Court Street to have a playground or a park right there. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
David Rayburn, 100 West Mulberry, Beatrice, Nebraska. So this is my third visit to the city council here on the same issue that I reported the first time. I am, I guess, concerned that, so when the minutes of the meeting are put together and the things that are put in there, there's some things that are left out. So the first meeting that I was at, I explained the issue in quite, I thought, detailed terms, but none of that showed up in the minutes. So I have a copy of the September 3rd minutes here, and I'm just looking at them. It basically just says that I have a question regarding a special use permit that no action was taken on recently in the process of having items placed on the agenda. But I explained that, what that was in pretty detailed thing. When I came back on the 16th, I did it again because Rich Kerr wasn't there on the 3rd, so I explained it in detail again. And again, in the minutes, it didn't state anything that was complete about why I'm here and why the mayor is continues to not do anything on it. I mean that's a personal thing. You councilmen don't do anything about it. Maybe you can't because the mayor holds all the money or all the bailiwicks in it. But you know, I had asked also in that I'd ask at the Open Meetings Act, which Councilman Fairbanks said it was the reason that you guys can't respond and you sat here mute and dumb at the meetings and don't respond to any of the questions and don't say anything is because of the Open Meetings Act. Well, that's not true. I asked for city attorney, I asked for the mayor, I asked for Tobias Templemeyer to explain to me on the chart where it says Nebraska Opens Meeting Act, exactly where it says the city council is remain stoop in the whole thing. And I don't get it. So we sat here again, I asked you the same questions, you guys don't say anything. So it's a personal thing, it's a mayor thing, it's a city administrator thing, it's a city attorney thing, but you guys don't have to sit there and be quiet. You can speak up, you can ask questions. The only thing you cannot do according to the Open Meeting Act is to act on any subject. You cannot present a document or an item to be voted on. That's the Open Meetings Act. That's what it's all about. It's about the people that are coming in here or don't come in here, and you guys vote on something and pass something that the people never had a chance to even listen to. It isn't about you asking a question on why my ordinance, that is unlawful act by this person that is on this property, continues to do his business, continues to drive his truck and trailer up and down the street in morning and afternoon and evening, and he continues 5 days a week to run a business out of an ag zone. You guys continue to let this happen. The mayor ignores it and is refusing to do it. It's an unlawful act. We have a city administrator who I think was an attorney, but he doesn't act like it. We have a city attorney who doesn't act like it. There is a ordinance out there that you refuse to do nothing about. And that basically is what really irritates me in this whole group. You guys are supposed to be here for the city of Beatrice. You guys are supposed to, Gary Barnard, you're a council member. I believe you're on the board that's supposed to overlook ordinances and get the ones that aren't any good out. But who is supposed to honor the ordinance that is in place? Who does that? We have a person that actually has a job, I believe, in the city. Can't think of his title now, but he's supposed to be the guy that goes out and looks for these ordinances that are in violation. But nothing's being done. So you keep doing that. Public forum. I'll come again next time. I'll say the same thing. You can sit here and be mute and not do a damn thing. That's your right, but it isn't right as a city councilman. It's not right for the city of Beatrice. So you guys just sit there, be quiet, and don't do a damn thing. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry for my cussing, it just came out.
You're fine. Thank you very much.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Kathleen Dilly. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I was born here. My 2 children have died here. They are in the cemeteries in this community. I have sat here for the last, hours that you've been taking your place, and some of you, like Dave said, you've not said a word. There are a few of you that speak for the others. Now, I must tell you, at my age of 77, I'm ready to retire back to my home state. I have considered Beatrice, Nebraska. I have considered selling 2 properties that are worth $1.5 million to come back to this city. But if our council people, our mayor, and our city administrator are biased, do you think I'm going to spend my money here? I would rather question. So I would seek your advice. I would seek your introspection, what are we doing here? I've driven up and down 136 a long time. I came over from Interstate 29 and into 136. It didn't change for a 3-lane until I got to the city limits. But there again, I see and hear some good things happening to Beatrice, this building used to be something else, wasn't it? Some of you have been around a long time, probably as long as I have. I remember your name, Mr. Doyle. But my concern is, if I'm going to come back here again, I have family throughout this area, Omaha, Redna, and be a part of this community once again. I've been a deputy sheriff. I've been in law enforcement for the last 16 years. The last 12 was spent with Lancaster County Sheriff in Lincoln. So I've kept an eye on and visited back and forth, but please. And what about other people coming to this town? Some of us old people coming back to roost, if you will. I just would like you to think about it and consider Dave. He's just asking for part of the community there in his area and other places. Are you really considering your own people, and are you taking care of your people that have been here for how many years and also retired? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. There are no reports tonight. The next regular city council meeting is October 21st, 2024 at 7 p.m. in this BPS Administration Building Board room. There may or may not be a work session at 6 p.m., and that'll be notified later. So, Mr. McLean.
I move the meeting be adjourned at 8:06 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor? That says 8-0.